So we will watch what the media has to say, then we're going to read the actual speech itself to see what Albo did say, and then we'll go and look at some more media beat up. We're going to go to Sky News. Dilemmas. I'm no fan of Albo, but it's kind of based that he's one of the few not taking the knee for Trump. The more America tells us to do something, the more I don't want to do it. Yes, and I think there's an Australian, this is what I was trying to pick up on before. I think there's a vibe out there, like there's a vibe, okay, in Australia that we, as larrikins and as a country that defines itself as being recalcitrant from time to time, we don't want to have to kiss the ring, right? Kudos to Albo for subtly sticking it up to Trump. He's not taking the knee. People are giving him flack because he hasn't gone over and negotiated strenuously to get the tariff situation in order. He's taken a position on it, let it play its course, and now he's out there saying rowdy things at speeches.
Prime Minister has made a subtle attempt to distance Australia's reliance on the United States during a keynote speech invoking the wartime leadership of John Curtin. Speaking in Sydney to mark 80 years since the former Labor Prime Minister's death, Anthony Albanese has praised Curtin's effort to give Australia the confidence and determination to think and act for ourselves.
We do not seek our inspiration overseas. We find it right here in our people. And we carry it with us in the way that we engage with the world.
The speech comes in the face of uncertainty over American trade tariffs and our nuclear submarine deal.
That's the long and the short of it, ladies and gentlemen. They like cutting it with great concision, as the media usually do. But like he's insinuating in a speech about a wartime prime minister who had to make some big calls because, you know, World War II, and is saying that, you know, Australia looks to itself. I can't find the original, so we're going to do something better. We're going to actually go through and read the speech itself so we can cut through the propaganda. John Curtin, Prime Minister of Australia, World War II, did some stuff which, like, by today's standards would be, you know, pretty radical. He made sure that we had conscription to fight against the enemy that was coming into our part of the world. And he basically, this is the defining moment, okay? And this is why I believe Albo's used this speech to bring up our relationship and our standing with the Americans, is because John was basically responsible for what we now think was just a natural progression. But Curtin was responsible for making the decision to distance ourselves from the UK and then come over to become a protectorate of the United States. So he realigned our strategic and military position, a huge strategic call for the leader or the head of our state to be like, look, we're moving away from the UK and we're going to go and follow what the Americans do. And so like there was a battle going on, okay, between FDR and Winston Churchill to a certain degree about, you know, getting the Allies to take their direction on certain things and who was going to be basically the commander-in-chief of the Allied forces. You know, Winston Churchill had some ideas about what he wanted us to do, and FDR had some ideas as well. Roosevelt had some thoughts about what the Australians should do. And when we moved away, Roosevelt fully backed Curtin's decision. Then Curtin made some other decisions as well, which were even beyond the Americans, even beyond what the Americans thought was good. He made decisions in Australia's interests, and this seems to be a defining characteristic of old Curtin. And so, in a time of the decaying world order, the end of globalism, the devolving of powers into little regional areas, Australia needs that type of leadership, a Curtin-esque figure to make big calls and the right calls, because we're moving into a different phase of human history. This moment is the core of Curtin's legend. The two divisions of the Australian Imperial Force returning from the Middle East. Curtin wanted those troops for the defence of Australia. Churchill wanted them in Burma. Roosevelt backed him. Barely 2 months after Curtin had said that Australia looked to America, America was telling him to listen to Britain. It says a great deal about the nature of the relationship with Britain up to that point, and indeed the character of Curtin's predecessors, that Churchill had assumed Australia would roll over. We know this because he had already given orders for the Admiralty troop ships carrying Australian soldiers to change course and steam to Rangoon. Diplomatic cables between leaders can be wrapped in all kind of formalities and flattery. Curtin's message to Churchill on learning this news is a study in the power of plain speaking. Language sanded back so you can see the grain. First, he rebukes Churchill for treating Australia's agreement to the diversion of Australian soldiers merely as a matter of form. And then he goes on speaking not just for his party or his government, but for his country. We feel a primary obligation to save Australia. Some historians downplay the military significance of that moment. They argue that the threat of invasion was always exaggerated, but consider the counterfactual. If Churchill and FDR had gone their way, Australian forces would have arrived in Burma barely a week before it fell to the Japanese. Hundreds, if not thousands of Australians would have been killed or taken prisoner. It would have been a disaster, every bit as crushing to national morale as the fall of Singapore. Instead, Curtin prevailed. Part of the debt we owe to Curtin, together with all the men and the women who served Australia in that terrible conflict, is to remind ourselves how closely history came to taking a different path. Curtin grasped that, and he never pretended to the people or to himself that dealing with these choices come easily. Here's the historical lesson for you, ladies and gentlemen, if you are wondering. I think this is where he is kind of drawing a line between what is happening at the moment with Australia and like the entire world, let's be honest, when it comes to negotiating with Trump and his tariff policies. He never pretended to the people or to himself that dealing with these choices came easily. And this is about building an economy and a society that upholds Australian values and values every Australian. It's the Labor way. And it's the Australian way under Labor, because we do not seek our inspiration overseas. We find it right here in our people. And that's the clip that they cut that we saw just before. Like, that clip, out of the context of that entire story, is pretty crazy. It's very stark the way that they painted it there. And they were being pretty middle of the road, Channel 9 there. Let's be honest, they could be much worse. And the way they cut it out was just like, all the speech was about him basically attacking Trump, or indirectly taking stabs at the President of the United States. It's the Australian way under Labor, because we do not seek our inspiration overseas. We find it right here in our people, and we carry it with us in the way that we engage with the world. Yet our alliance with the US ought to be remembered as a product of Curtin's leadership in defense and foreign policy, not the extent of it. Because Curtin's famous statement that Australia looked to America was much more than the idea of trading one strategic guarantor for another, or swapping an alliance with an old world for one with the new. It was a recognition that Australia's fate would be decided in our region. It followed the decision Curtin had made in 1941 that Australia would issue its own declaration of war with Japan, speaking for ourselves as a sovereign nation. That's interesting. We make our own declarations of war here, motherfucker. So we remember Curtin not just because he looked to America. We honour him because he spoke for Australia. And I think this is what is happening at the moment, right? For Australia and for Labor, that independence has never meant isolationism. Choosing our own way doesn't mean going it alone. It was the Curtin and chiefly governments that brought Australia into the United Nations, the World Bank and the IMF at the outset. Ooh. Well, look, the World Bank, I guess, and the IMF were a little bit different back in the day. Australia did not just join the institutions which created international rules-based order, we helped shape them. Unfortunately, the international rules-based order applies to everybody but the people that we're talking about at the moment. Trump and the boys aren't too fussed when it comes to the international rules-based order. Then and now we strive for a world where the sovereignty of every nation is respected and the dignity of every individual is upheld. Then and now Australia backs our words with deeds. That's the approach of our government. Our government has taken from day one, rebuilding and standing as a leader in the Pacific, patiently and deliberately working to stabilize our relationship with China. He said the China word. That's it. That's the word. Take note of that when we go watch the next piece, because it's going to be a hit piece by none other than Sky News. The world John Curtin knew and the nation he served belong to history now. Yet the lessons of his life and legacy endure, because while the nature of global uncertainty evolves, this fundamental truth remains. Australia cannot predict or control challenges we will face, but we can determine how we respond. We can choose the way we engage with our region and deal with the world. We can choose. That's a good point. Look, it's really subtle, right? It's really, really subtle. Talking about that taking a swipe at Trump. Like the way that they've been bashing this up the media is just like he's basically said, "F you, Trump, we'll do whatever the f we want, you bastard." Like, you know, it's pretty sensationalized so far. So let's have a look, sees, at Sky News and see what they have to say. All right, first comment, all right, 281 likes. All right, this will set the scene for you. He's a woke joke. That's right. Anthony Albanese is one hell of a woke joke, ladies and gentlemen. I'll leave you with that.
Well, I don't know how he defines the Australian way, because clearly he has come up with his own definition of it. Because I always thought...
Straight off the bat, because I watched this for 30 seconds just to test the video out, but like straight off the bat, he doesn't say the Australian way. He talks about like the Labor way a lot in relation to our foreign diplomacy and our military history. So fuck you right off the bat, because I was confused by what she was talking about before when I watched this, and now I've read the speech.
Well, I don't know how he defines the Australian way, because clearly he has come up with his own definition of it. Because I always thought the Australian way was to stand tall, to act with courage, to be brave, to charge into battle with our allies, to fight for our values. But it seems now the Australian way is to shrink and sulk into the corner and hope not to be noticed and just stand back while everyone trounces all over us. What is this new Australian way he's defined? Because I don't want that. That is not Australian. I was at the Australian War Memorial down in Canberra a couple of weeks ago, and you walk through the main area there and you see the names of thousands of Australians who have died fighting alongside the United States and our Western allies. That is who we are as a nation. We are strong, we are brave, we are courageous. We're not shrinking violets, embarrassed and scared, but that's how Albo is trying to redefine us.
So, Rita, it appears the Australian way, as you said...
Fuck, she was pissed off. She was really pissed off just then. God damn. I wish I had that passion. I'm going to have to work on that in my strand. I'm going to get really passionate sometimes. I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I'll have to take some drugs, and then I'm going to come to streams and get pissed off.
Send the Virgin airline out to see what the Chinese Navy are doing, and you get them to radio it in. That's pretty much the Australian way now.
Well, he's cozying up to China. I mean, the messaging here is quite obvious. It's not just saying we can go it alone, because Albo doesn't believe we can go it alone. Our defence spending indicates that. But he's saying, essentially, China's our friend, and that speech was very closely watched in Washington, and insiders are saying...
Was it? Was it? Does anyone have any friends in Washington? Can you quickly ask them how many people watched Albo's speech? Because I tried to watch it and I couldn't fucking find it. All I could find was snippets of it from, you know, media sources and stuff like that. I really wanted to watch it, but I had to read it out instead.
Saying it's being viewed very negatively by the Trump administration, understandably. And we need the US, we need the Trump administration. We've seen the NATO allies, after having their little tantrums, fall into line and do what Donald Trump has asked them to do, which is to be a little bit more self-sufficient in defending themselves by devoting more of their GDP spent on spending greater amount on defence, a greater percentage of their GDP, and we're just being completely recalcitrant when it comes to that.
The word I used. Yes, it is recalcitrant. Like, but, and, hello, which one are we? Okay, are we Australians that stand up tall and fight for our interests? Or are we just sucking up to Donald Trump? Like, which one is it? I can't follow you. The other one, the angry one, she wanted us to, you know, stand up and be Australian, do what we believe in. And like now it's just like, we must follow America. Do you not understand how dangerous this is? And they said the word China. I knew it wouldn't take fucking long. I told you. And it was in the speech once. The word China was there once. months.
And we're going to pay for it when he eventually sits down with Donald Trump and does a trade deal. Because at NATO, one of the things Donald Trump said that, again, Australian government should have taken note of was the NATO allies have fallen into line, but Spain hasn't.
Yeah.
So when we sit down with Spain, they're going to pay. They're still going to pay what they should have paid because they will get a trade deal and tariffs that are greater than they otherwise would have because of the attitude to defence spending. So what do you think is going to happen when Albo eventually sits down with the president? Do you think he's going to go, well, yeah, you've been calling me names, your ministers have been calling me names, your ambassador is an absolute train wreck, and you've just, completely treated with disdain calls to spend more on defence. Yeah, I'm going to give you...
What has the ambassador been saying? Is anyone in the comments across this slander here? What have they been calling Trump? Because I'd actually like to know those names, because we might start using them in streams. It'd be pretty funny.
A really advantageous trade deal. What do you think's going to happen? The fact that they haven't sat down with Australia yet, when we are one of the very few countries in the world that has a surplus with them. So they actually are, we're one of the very few. We should have been first in the door. We should have got the best deal. And we're still waiting for a one-on-one meeting.
And on top of that, Freya, we've also got, one of the worst attacks on free speech in the Western world underway with our e-safety commissioner and her attacks on America and the way that we are basically at odds with America on every single thing. We have the real crime, if you like, here is that the Liberal Party, the opposition, should be now going, we need to be close to America. We have all the ties with Donald Trump. Peter Dutton was over there, the first person to go and sit in the White House when Donald Trump was elected, except you weren't, were you? You were so stupid, Liberal Party, so moronic, so utterly bereft of any ability to look into the future that you spent the election campaign dismissing our closest relationship with Trump. You could have used it, you could have had it, it was there for the taking, and you morons actually pushed it away, and now you got nothing. Freya, am I being too tough on the Liberals?
Well, I mean, I would say so, but definitely there are elements of truth in what you're saying. The media in Australia also has Trump derangement syndrome, the way the ABC covers Trump. If you're just an
Trump derangement syndrome. I'm going to check that one. TDS is a pejorative term that originated among Donald Trump's supporters and conservative commentators. It's used to describe people, often liberals, progressives, or mainstream media figures, who they believe are irrationally obsessed with opposing or criticizing Donald Trump. That's a real fucking thing. They blame Trump for everything. They dismiss anything he does outright. They view Trump not as a political opponent, but some kind of existential evil.
The ABC covers Trump. If you're just an average Aussie, chances are the only messaging you're hearing about Trump is negative, 100%. Hysterical commentary from the left. And so I think definitely in the lead up to the election, that influenced the Liberal Party's thinking.
Yeah,
they were
cowardice. That's just cowardice, because the same messaging, the same Trump derangement syndrome exists in the UK when it comes to any reporting on US politics. And yet you got Nigel Farage not kowtowing to that. He's saying he's copying policies straight from the Trump playbook. He's not shying away with the alliance with Donald Trump, and he's winning. Yeah,
and you've got Keir Starmer, a hardcore lefty in the same
he's
Albo mold, who's
like
worked
Donald
out
Trump.
how to...
Remember that, ladies and gentlemen. Keir Starmer is a hardcore lefty. All right, we were talking about the idea of radical centrists the other day, and like Keir Starmer, a hardcore lefty, I'd like to see that. I'd like him to bring back seizing the means of production in the Labor Party objectives. Then you can call Keir Starmer a hardcore lefty.
Straight off
It's not necessarily about Trump or not. It's about standing on strength and actually having leadership.
But that is what we are lacking in this country, because our conservatives, our so-called conservatives, look at the media coverage, look at what the focus groups are doing, and they don't try to counter it. They don't say, well, obviously we need to explain our position. We need to articulate these policies and why we believe in them, like they did with The Voice. They just go, this is too hard. We don't want a backlash. We're going to be Labor light. And every time a Conservative...
Labor light. They are struggling at the moment. Like, I don't watch much of this. Maybe you guys are across Australian politics in a little bit more depth than I am. But like the Conservative movement in Australia, they are struggling at the moment. Talk about complete disarray. I've never seen them so openly criticize the Liberals, like openly smash them and say like that they are just absolutely defunct of any usefulness.
Conservative government, or opposition, I should say, is Labor light, they lose.
They lose.
And I don't know why they keep going back to a losing strategy. Look at Victoria if you want to see what happens when you go down that road. You have absolutely nothing to take to the electorate, even when the government is a broken, backward, hard left, mess. They will still win because people will vote for a party that believes in something. And the Liberals at the moment, it's hard to understand what they actually believe in.
Well, I want to raise the question.
Sorry, this is the best analysis, actually, of the Liberals' disarray at the moment. They don't believe in anything. Look, I've had enough. I can't do any more of this. Like, they're not even talking about Albo here. They're just like picking up the pieces of the shattered Liberal Party off the ground and saying, why didn't they lick Trump's asshole harder? Like, it should be so clean that we can see our own reflection in it and then have a good think about ourselves. But it's not there yet. This man will go down in Australian history as one of the biggest disasters we have ever encountered. Big call. Wish we had a real, genuine and intelligent Prime Minister. It'll be the first time in human history that we haven't had an intelligent politician. Don't you reckon? Runny Honey 786? I don't care how low Australia gets, because we will not make a comeback until that traitor, Albanese and Wong, is thrown out of politics. Only then when we'll be able to be a great ally. I'm way more prouder of American patriots and their president. I wish I lived in Texas now. See, like, this is it, okay? You have Anthony Albanese's speech, which is just like, this is what we do in Australia. We will be independent and we need to basically rely on ourselves to make the right decision in our interests and not be guided by other people. So if it aligns with this person or that person, so be it, as long as we're making the right decision. And you have people like this. This is basically the sentiment coming out of this piece of content and the comment section is we need to basically follow the Americans. The only chance that Australia has is if we are a great ally, ALLIE. I'm way more proud of American patriots than like, I'm happier to be an American right now than an Australian. Like, the hypocrisy that comes out of a piece of content like this is very delicious, because these people are the real patriots. Remember that. Not like lefties and progressives and wokies. The real patriots are these people, and right now their patriotic line is, we need to suck up to the Americans. Australia doesn't have the testicular fortitude to be an independent nation. Talk about a patriotic vibe. I'm swelling with patriotic pride right now, because my only analysis of the situation is we need to really start sucking up harder to the Americans. That's as patriotic as you get. Right there. No faith in your country at all.
Remember, I am, you are, we are a mystery.